One is that you set the goal, but the other question that I would add to that is, who do I need to become to accomplish that goal? Like, who do I need to be? Or like, even if you say, let's say, that goal of like, I want to become healthier. It's like, okay, the healthy version of me, what does that look like? How does that person lives? What kind of habits they have? And then based on that, it might be easier to come up with ideas. Um, because for you to really sustain that goal, you need to become that person, the healthy person. And then you literally just copy what healthy you would do, baby step by baby step. I think like it would be valuable to touch on like kind of how do you get clarity on like what you want or like what to focus on. Because as you were speaking, I was thinking on,
Yeah.
I don't actually think I set yearly as much anymore. For yearly, I might set like I have that like Misagi or like 2 3 big goals of like things that I'd want to
Yeah. Yeah,
achieve.
me too.
But then what I do, I break them, or I have like seasons. I call them seasons. So like right now, December, January, February, I have my season of focusing on pretty much like work all the time. And on top of it, doing like 75 hard or just like that for to cover training piece. I do that. Um, and I might add in cold because I listened. It's so annoying. I listened back one of our old episodes, and I was talking there about my cold exposure, and I'm like,
Oh,
I was
because you
thinking to
haven't
do
been
it a
doing
few
that.
times a week. Like I haven't had a chance to start the. Well, by the time this comes out, I have started probably the season. Um, but like I wanted to do like 3 times a week, and then I listened to that episode, and I was like, maybe I want to do daily because I found a place here that is not that far. Like it's compared to the other place, it's like 40 50 minutes until you get there. This one is like 30 minutes, and I'm
Mm.
like, it is manageable. It is something that I could do. um and even like today I was like, maybe I make it happen. But like with that, what I do is I have seasons. So like right now is the season when it's kind of like, I call it the cave mode. I just go in the cave and I just like work away. And it's both like the training and the work. um and but then after that, um initially I had the idea that I will have social season. Right now I'm not fully sure because I don't know what will happen this season. Because a lot of times by the time I come towards the end of, usually it's like around 3 months. When I come to at the end of those like 3 months, that's when I start to get clarity and like what is kind of the next thing that I want to focus on, or um kind of, yeah, put my energy into. Because
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I have learned is you can't focus on all the things at once. You can't
No. Mm-mm.
fix, work through. We have really limited amount of focus. And what happens when, at least in my experience, maybe somebody's superhuman and they can do that. When I try to focus on too many things at once, I end up getting really minimal results or progress in all of them, and then I get frustrated and I feel like, what's the point? I can't find a way that works. Or I tried this like strategy and it didn't work, but actually it might just be like my focus was too scattered. It was too
Yeah.
too many areas that I tried to tackle or focus on. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's been one of the things that's been like a challenge for me. Not challenge, but I'm learning to simplify the whole thing of like
Right.
setting goals. Just
Mm-hmm.
focus on one thing instead of 50 things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where also it feels like you can breathe now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's because see when that's where I get overwhelmed. I can get overwhelmed so easily by looking at stuff like that. And so that's why I do have to do that. It's just like on, when I started the podcast, there were so many things I wanted to do. And I knew I couldn't spread myself that thin, that in order to be, to have success, there's going to be, and I did, I really, the first year just focused on the podcast and that was my focus. And it was so much easier to manage as opposed to, it's like they say, oh, multitasking. Oh, I can multitask. Well, I can too, but it doesn't mean I'm great at it. It doesn't mean that the stuff that I get done is going to be great because it needs our focus.
Yeah.
And so there's a time and a place for multitasking. It's not when you're setting your goals. It's not when you're setting your resolutions. It's not when you're trying to do them. And you're right. You need to, and that's why, yeah, that's what, let's tell the audience that's exactly what they need to do is they need to pick one or two big things they want for the
Yeah.
year and then break it down. And I would say start with one
I would
because
even I would even not suggest for the year. I would say for The way I would approach it. So
Well,
let's
I would say
say,
break it down. What I
yeah,
was
yeah,
going to say is break it down even more for, yeah,
yeah,
you have one goal for the year, but you're going to break it down to bite-sized pieces throughout the whole year. And
yeah.
you could break that down by month. Okay, so this month I'm going to do these steps so that I can reach that goal, and that's what you do, and that's what you focus on.
Yeah, because I think the way I would approach it, or I'm thinking how I'm approaching it, I think I choose few areas of life where I would want to achieve one goal. So there's two ways to approach it. Either you choose one area, but you have several goals within it, or you choose few areas for for the year, and you set one goal in each of them. Ideally, one. But then what I do is I look at the I look at the goals, I look at the outline of the year, and I'm like, okay, so for these 3 months, I'm gonna focus on this one area,
Yeah.
and the rest, if I set any goals, I will set what I call maintenance goals.
Mm,
What are the goals that or what are some of the steps that I need to take so that I don't fall backwards in that area, but I don't
right.
focus on like now having like just breakthroughs and like all the goals and everything within
Mm-hmm.
that area. It's like, no, what's the bare minimum that I need to do? Let's say if you now focus on well, extreme example is Iron Man. If I now choose to focus on Iron Man, probably my relationship's going to suffer or I can't prioritize them.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will do is I will set the bare minimum. Let's say I will meet my friends like instead of like weekly or bi-weekly, or not bi-weekly, twice a week, I'll be like, maybe I'm going to do it bare minimum 2 times a month. I need to meet them. So
Yeah.
there's still the bare minimum, but it's not like I still maintain the relationships, but I'm not moving forward with like accelerating them, making like
Right.
more or like making them deeper, stuff like that. So I think that's the way I approach it, where I, because another thing that I learned, and I think I read it in a book, 12-week year, where is it, yeah, 12-week year, where they're talking about the concept of, you imagine that your year is 12 weeks instead of 12 months, because a lot of times
Mm,
our brains just, if you now try to predict what will happen in 11 months,
yeah.
where you're going to be in 11 months,
Yeah.
it's like, I didn't think I'm gonna be where I am with the mindset that I have
Yeah.
11 months ago. I didn't think that. So that's why I like to focus on 3 months, because within those 3 months, there's enough change that can happen where, one, you might even reach that goal within those months because you actually focus on it and you take action on it. But also by the end of those 3 months, you can be like, okay, I think I'm ready to move into this area now. It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
we talked about it. We wanted to touch on that idea of kind of, you don't clean your house
Oh, yeah. This is a
sporadically.
great example.
Yeah, like
Great
so.
example.
So the way I would talk about it is like, you imagine like each room in your house, it's like a life role that you have. So it can be a spouse, it can be a business owner, it can be like employee, it can be brother, sister, it can be any kind of role, or like athlete, in my case. So if I now try to go and clean all rooms at once, or I now go and do
The whole
like 5 minutes
house.
in this room, then I go to that room, and then I'm like, oh, maybe I'm gonna clean this as well. It's like, how clean will be the house? And not only house, I will feel overwhelmed because I'm
Mm-hmm.
cleaning everything, but nothing gets cleaned.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, but instead, it's like, okay, I'm gonna choose one room, which is like one area of life or one life role that you have, and I'm going to focus on this for this amount of time. And it's not always until it's fully clean, because in some areas there's more work to do. Um, but like with this specific goal, this specific outcome that you might want to have, just I just focus on this for this season. Then
Mm-hmm.
once this room is in order, I can move on to the next room, and I know that this room will be clean until most likely I'm going to go through the other rooms, and by the time I
Right.
come back, I will need to clean this room again.
Exactly.
But there might be different kind of cleaning or level of cleaning that I will need to do.
Right. Right.
And just do
Yeah. That's
that one step at a time, one room at a time.
Yep, yep. I'm so glad that you did bring that up. We talked about that because that's a really good example of really setting your goals. And focusing on it, and it just it's so much more manageable, and it just takes the pressure off, and you don't feel overwhelmed, and you feel empowered
Yeah.
because you look, you're like, I can do this. I can do this. I couldn't do the other, but I can do this. And when you
Yeah.
accomplish it, it just, I don't know. Like I said, the momentum keeps going, and it just feels so good. You're like, wow, I really did. I said I could do it, and I actually did it.
And I think
And
it
it's
also
exciting.
helps with overwhelm because
Oh,
like
totally, totally.
because
Yeah,
instead of looking kind of similar to that mountain example, instead of looking at all the rooms and now like you go in this room and that room is that and that one is
yeah,
and instead of doing that, you just go in, you just deal with this nasty room. You're
yeah,
like, okay, let's start with this and let's close the doors to the other ones.
yeah. We'll get to it. It's gonna get
Yeah,
done.
I'll get there. But also as you finish this room, by the time you go to the next one, you feel accomplished. You feel
Right,
better. Um,
right.
but
And
it's
you've
not,
learned. You've learned how to clean the next room.
yeah,
You've
and
learned some
it's,
tricks.
but I think the challenge with this is not something that is feels as the best approach because we want to fix everything today,
Yeah.
especially New
Yes.
Year's. I want
Yeah.
to change everything.
Yeah.
I'm
I
done with
want to be a
this life.
completely new person.
Yeah, which you
Done.
can be, but
Right.
it's one room at a time, one step at a time.
Right.
And actually I would argue that it's much more effective because even though it might seem slower, you actually accomplish stuff
Right. Right.
and you do get results.
That's one thing actually
At least in my
I
experience.
I even do when I'm sitting and working in my office. When there's, I'll do that as a daily thing. I'll be like, okay, today I want to accomplish this and this. And then I literally block my time off on my calendar and I literally set a timer and I'll pick one thing to work on and I will set the timer 45 minutes and I will shut my phone off so I'm not hearing it. And I will 100% focus on, I won't look at email or anything else. I will work on that for 45 minutes until the timer goes off. And then I get up and I take a break and I walk around. And it feels like, gosh, I'm not, it can feel like I'm not accomplishing much, like you were saying, because I just worked on that one thing, but I kicked ass on it. I got so far ahead and got so much done in that one thing that I'm actually way ahead, because if I was working on 3 or 4 things, I'm only going to get this much done with all of them instead of getting this much done with the one thing. And I would just block my time off. And I would feel like, because I tend in my day I got a lot going on. So I tend to get overwhelmed. And that's what I do to keep myself from getting overwhelmed. Like, okay, right now I'm going to work on this. And then the next hour I'm going to work on this. And then the next hour I'm going to work on that. And at the end of the day, I feel like, wow, I've accomplished a lot. And I feel better that I got the important things done. So
Yeah.
that's like mini goals that you can do. That's like little daily goals,
Yeah.
things that you can
I
get
can give
done.
you a perspective on that. So, what you just said. So, let's say 45 minutes, 30 days. That is 22 and a half hours. But if you do a year, that's 270 hours.
It's a lot.
And yeah, and in the day, it feels like, oh, it's. Oh, actually, let me.
That's a good way to put it together, because that's the baby steps
And
adding up to big ones.
you look at it in 40-hour work weeks, that's almost 7 weeks.
Wow.
Only 45
That's a
minutes
lot.
a day.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. On the one task.
Yeah. And then people are like, oh, 45 minutes is nothing. It doesn't count. It's better than you now doing something which is so common with resolutions. And I'm not just pointing it out. I'm speaking from experience.
My own experience.
Where you set this resolution, everything gonna change, and now you're gonna work on this one project like 8 hours a day, and then in 3 days you're burnt out, you're done with it, and and you're like, that can't happen. I won't be able to make it happen. And how many hours did you spend? 24. Here it's 270.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah. Exactly. And then I need a change up in my day because I can get bored. I like to have a little variety. So
Yep.
that is kind of, because I can really focus on this one thing and I know, oh, I'm going to work on the next thing, just, I don't know. It's just kind of how my brain works. And, we're just putting these ideas out there that can maybe help you guys breaking things down, because I know for me, I would get so frozen. It would overwhelm me so much and I wouldn't get anything done. And then I would be frozen and I would beat myself up because things aren't getting done. And each day
Yeah.
is going by, this time's going by, and I'm wasting this time and I'm not getting stuff done. And
And then you feel
in
even
this
worse and it's
vicious
harder. Yeah.
cycle, it's a vicious cycle to be in. And so these are all little steps, and I highly recommend it. And there's times where you are going to be able to take a really big step. You're going to be able to do something big, and that's okay. But for the most part, I mean, really, it is little steps,
Yeah.
and they add up quickly, as you were saying. That's
Yeah, and
crazy.
I would suggest focusing on like what you said is really important because one, you want to find out what works for you, which takes experimenting. Just try
Right.
things out,
Yes.
and there's so many
Yes.
methods out there of how you can work, how you can approach it, stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
just experiment with that. And also what I would say with the baby steps in general is and this is something that I always say is like make them so small that it feels ridiculous not to be able to do it. Especially when you start.
I love that. Say that again.
Make them so small that it feels ridiculous not to be able to do it. So like even if 45 minutes seems a lot, start with 5. Like you
Yeah.
probably can find 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and then you're going to do it daily, and it doesn't mean that you stop at 5 minutes. Down the line you can add more, and by the end of the year you might even be able to do 3 hours and it's nothing. But it all starts with, because I caught myself recently with, I'm like, oh, I want to work on this and this and this. I caught myself doing what I'm trying to avoid doing, or what I tell
Yeah.
others not to do. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna have, I will keep it simple. I will have 3 things, and I will have baby steps in this, and there's like 5 baby steps in this. And then there's like, and those baby steps were slightly too big for them to be baby steps. And then like with this area, I'm gonna have like another like 5 6 baby steps. And like with this area, this is like the biggest area that I want to focus on. So I'm gonna add like 7 baby steps, but they can be like a bit time consuming. So yeah, that's my plan. And then I started
God.
to do it, and I'm like, yeah, too much too soon. I know that.
Yeah.
I know that few months down the line I actually could easily handle that, but that's because of the momentum. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this one I'm gonna cut off where there's only 2 baby steps that are like really really small. They don't take more than like 10 minutes. This one, that's like the personal. I was like, okay, instead of having like 8, I'm gonna have 5, and all of them take no more than 30 minutes a day. Um, and then this big one, I'm gonna keep it as it is because that's the main focus. And
Mm.
then it's much easier to stick to them and do them, because I know that I'm still gonna touch on the areas that I want to touch on, but because the other areas are in maintenance mode, I just need to put enough to just keep doing stuff, keep having momentum, but it's not me accelerating yet. I can add stuff down the line when I have more
Mm-hmm.
um, endurance or ability to tolerate more, um, or I'm more in the rhythm. But right now, because I'm coming back from all these like setbacks, which is another important point, you can't start off the same as you finished before
No.
you got the setback. You need to ease into it and be okay
Mm-hmm.
with it. It might take, it actually usually takes less time with consistency than we think it's gonna take. We just start too quick too soon, and that's what is
Yeah.
making us fall off the track, like I did. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Learning from my own mistakes. I don't know which time already. And I'm like, okay, I need to simplify this whole thing. And now that I did, I instantly feel in my head no overwhelm, and I'm like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
hitting all the boxes, but I don't feel like, oh, I still have this many to do. Um, and all of them are hit. It's just like it's not as much as I initially wanted to, because as I started to do it, which a lot of times the only way you can know if it's too much is as you do it. I was able to see like, yeah, it's too much. I need to adjust, and I adjusted, and now I'm like much better.
Rather than saying, "Oh, it's too much, I can't do this," and give up, you just went, "Oh, I didn't plan this out real well."
Yeah,
Because like you're right. You're not going to know until you step out. Sometimes you're not going to realize how things always take longer than
yeah,
you really plan. And the thing that I really wanted to emphasize too is, we have these goals in our head, or these resolutions in our head, and it's really important that you write them out. It is so important that you write them out, because I know for me, and this is probably true for everybody, I'm sure it is that, we put these ideas in our head, and they just seem so big, and just like, oh, it's nice, it's kind of in passing. But when you put it on paper, it becomes a reality, and it helps your brain be able to figure it out, because when it's in our head, it's just in our head. influencing us. It's not encouraging us. It's not something that's really
Yeah.
exciting. We just think about it. But writing it out is so important. And it brings it into reality. And I've talked about it in my podcast. It's like the crazy stuff that goes on sometimes in our brain. And sometimes when we say it out loud, all of a sudden it just has no power on us anymore. So
Yeah.
it's the same thing with our goals. We've got to write this stuff down. And I got to the point, what's interesting, there's a shift for me. Like when I worked at a corporate job, I knew it was expected of me every day when I went into the office. So I didn't really have to like set goals. I just kind of
Mm-hmm.
knew what to do. When I became an entrepreneur and doing my own thing, and I don't have anybody coming at me telling me what they need from me, I would sit down and go, I have no idea where to start. But when I was off going for a walk or something, I could come up with a whole list of things that I needed to do, right? Then I sit down, I'm like, I have no idea. So to battle that, that's exactly what I did, because I would sit there and I go, oh, that's a great idea. Oh, that's a great idea. I need to do that. I need to do that. But I wouldn't write them down. And then it's the weirdest thing. I would sit down in my seat and all those ideas would go away.
Yep.
So writing them down is important. And I write down myself. I'll sit down at my desk. I'll write down the things that are really important that day that I know I have to get done. And as I'm going on, oh yeah, one more thing, and I'd write it down, because otherwise they go out the window. Our brains are busy processing, so we can't expect them to remember everything.
Actually, like one thing that came to me that I think is really important to mention with goals is, one is that you set the goal, but the other question that I would add to that is, who do I need to become to accomplish that goal?
Oh yeah.
Like, who do I need to be? Or like, even if you say, let's say that goal of like, I want to become healthier. It's like, okay, the healthy version of me, what does that look like? How does that person lives? What kind of habits they have? And then based on that, it might be easier to come up with ideas. Because for you to really sustain that goal, you need to become that person, the healthy person.
Right. Right.
And then you
Very
literally
true.
just copy what healthy you would do.
Yeah,
Baby step by
exactly.
baby step.
Well, and on that note about writing things down, I did create a little worksheet that we'll put on here, and it's called Turning Resolutions into Goals. And it's just a step by step that really kind of helps you create your resolution and then your action steps, your goals, in order to reach that. And I think if for those of you who've never done this and it just seems like such an overwhelming big thing, and I would say just start with one. Just start with one resolution and put your action steps for the next week down. Start there. Even if you have to start with what you're going to do tomorrow, just start with tomorrow. If you have
or even today.
Even today, yeah, which it would be writing down your resolution and begin to write your action steps. And so we'll have it on there. On there, we'll have a link for it. It'll be a PDF. But it's literally step by step. Set your resolution, break it down into goals, and then commit to your first goal. And then I thought this was interesting. I don't know if you got a chance to read them. The additional hacks to keeping your resolution and goals. I thought this was kind of interesting, and I'll read them real quick. But this will also be included. Writing them down, which I just said. Writing down your resolutions, goals helps you solidify your commitment and serves as a visual reminder. Totally, for me, I'm so visual. And track your progress. Track your progress using a journal app, or a calendar to regularly record your progress. This helps you stay accountable and see how far you've come.
Okay, so this one I would want to pause on, because this is really, really important one.
Yeah.
For several reasons. From my experience with tracking, first of all, when you track stuff, you can't be dishonest with yourself, because
it doesn't feel good.
And it goes both for the good and the bad, because what I realized is when I would be frustrated before I would track stuff, let's say like losing weight is a good example. I would be like, oh, nothing is working, I'm eating healthy, and then I started to track calories, and I started to track the workouts and everything. And I was like, oh, when I eat the what I usually eat, it's actually more calories than I thought. Surprise. Or like, oh, there was a snack that came in here. Interesting. And like, it's so easy to kind of, oh, it's just a snack. And then if you have snack every day for the whole year, it's like, It adds up. That's the first thing where like the tracking actually, and it's literally in any area you can you can find a way to track something.
Right.
Um, so in one way is it doesn't in one way is that it doesn't allow you to lie to yourself about not getting results. It keeps you accountable. It's like, okay, I didn't get results. Let's look at my habits, or like I call them baby steps, and it's like, oh, they're red. Okay,
Yeah. I
so
haven't done them.
and also like I would be careful not to jump to conclusions about yourself or jump into like beating yourself up mode. It's like, okay, they're red. Why are they red? Maybe it was really stressful week. Maybe it was really busy. Maybe you have literally no excuse. You were just lazy. Okay, noted. I was lazy.
Right.
What is it that I can do next week? And I would recommend not to try to jump from zero to hero. And it's like, okay,
Right.
last week I did, instead of, let's say the goal was like 5 workouts, I did one. Okay, let's try to beat last week me, and let's try to do 2 workouts
Mm-hmm.
minimum. If I do more,
Mm-hmm.
cool. If less,
Mm-hmm.
probably I'm gonna come back and I will have conversation with myself about like, okay, what happened there.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of more like on the, not like the negative side, but it's like how you can keep yourself accountable, or at least not lie to yourself, which is really important when it comes to also building a relationship with yourself,
Yeah.
which
How
is
holding
really
yourself
important.
accountable is for positive and for
Yeah.
the
But then on the
pitfalls.
positive side, a lot of times we can feel like, oh, I'm not doing anything and I'm like not moving forward, stuff like that. Then if you look at your baby steps, it can literally be like this week, let's say if you had 5 baby steps a day, you finished all 5 of them, you did extra 35 things in this week. Extra 35 things, just 1 week. Um, and even with that, you can track the progress, and you can, let's say again, the weight is a good example because it's really easy to kind of measure stuff. It's probably deeper than that because there's like also emotional stuff and things like that. But um, we just stick to the math piece of it. Oh, I'm losing weight. Let's look back on the week. Oh, my baby steps are green. If I was even tracking what I was eating, let's look at that and see what contributed from what I did this week to me actually getting that result. And let's see if I can find a way to now replicate that in this week that is coming up
Mm-hmm.
and do the same thing. And also give myself credit, even if you don't get results, you see that I'm still finishing the tasks. And if you
You're
don't get
still getting
results,
healthier. You're
yeah.
still getting healthier, even if you don't see it on the scale. You're still getting healthier.
Yeah, like that's something that after my half Ironman, I don't believe in the scale anymore.
No, no. The scale is not my friend. I no. It plays with my head too much. No. Mm-mm. So the next one, this is a good one. Celebrate your milestones.
Yeah, I struggle with that one.
Do you?
I don't think it's a struggle. I think it's more like eh, yeah, it's like it was interesting when I was talking with Cindy on our episode about the finishing the, oh, that, yeah, that one is out by now. About like me finishing how I felt. I'm like, I was actually thinking about like what's next, or like how we get home, how we get everything sorted quickly, because that day we were like going back to Latvia that night. That's my first thought. First of all, I was like, why is my time, like I was trying to understand what happened because they were showing me a different time than I actually
Mm.
had. So that clicked. I'm like, wait, why is the time so quick compared to like what they showed me? But like with accomplishments, it's something that certain accomplishments, I think the challenge is that in some ways I expect them, because even like with the Ironman, I didn't know if I can finish it, but it was kind of like expected in my mind. Like it's really weird
Yeah.
place to be because I didn't know if I can finish, but I
Yeah.
also expected to finish. So it's like kind of like by the time I finish, I'm like, well, yeah, kind of. So
I know.
like,
I tend to do that too, but I tend to do. I can relate to that. It's
so
like,
I'm
well, yeah, I'm
slowly
supposed to do
learning to
that.
celebrate, and also celebrate smaller things, not only the big things.
Right. Correct. And that's exactly what they say. Yeah, they say
Yeah,
to
that should be my resolution, to learn to celebrate more.
yes, yeah, because that's almost and when you were saying that, I was sitting here thinking about it, and I tend to do the same thing. It's kind of like, well, I'm supposed to do it, so what's the big deal? But it is a big deal, and we do, and that's where we need to slow down and stop and go, you know what, that was a big deal, and we do need to celebrate it. So yeah, you need to celebrate your milestones, the little ones and the big
Hmm.
ones, and you create what your reward is. And what some of the things that we were just talking about, start small and
Yep.
manageable. Um, And that's one of the things I put is rather than creating resolutions and goals for the entire year, start with 1, 2, or 3 month commitment. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I put. This one's interesting. Habit stacking. Habit stacking.
it's a good
Attach your
hack.
goal to an existing habit. For example, after brushing your teeth, meditate for 2 minutes. So you can stack them on. Find accountability partner. We talked about that.
Yeah, that's another one that I wanted to mention when you talked about writing the goal down. I'm like, if you want to go a step further, share it with somebody.
Yeah, have a friend that you can share it with and have them hold you accountable.
Yeah, that's an
Yeah,
important piece so that they can also hold you accountable, not only share with them.
right, exactly. Focus on one goal at a time, which we touched on.
Mm-hmm.
And another one, anticipate and plan for obstacles. So expect them and then try to plan for them. Be easy on yourself. We touched on that. And then this last one we did too, revisit and adjust as needed. So
That is so
like you
important.
said, yeah. And because that one was a really eye opener for me because
Yeah, because you had black and white.
you just took the words right out of my mouth, literally.
Yeah.
That was so my thinking. It's all or nothing. And so you could imagine in my life when I looked at everything in black and white, that I was always failing. I was failing a lot.
Or
There was
succeeding
no
was so
grace.
hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the black and white I had to take away. And man, that has been,
What helped you to take it away? Because that's a big one.
well, that was the one, I'll tell you what did it, is that coach telling me, Lisa, you see things in black and white. You need to start looking at things in color. And that was the, what? What? Wait a minute. Okay. And so it was really hard at first because it was so ingrained with me. I mean, that's just
What
how my
was
thinking was. And then
the
I
hard piece?
just thinking outside the box, trying to find a way to think outside the box, because that's what it was. Is when in my black and white thinking, everything fit in a box and it fit perfectly in a box, and anything outside of that didn't count. It had whatever I had to do was fit in that box, and that was what I had to work with. I couldn't work with anything outside the box. So I had, when he said that, it was like, I knew it was important what he said. I just didn't understand the significance, but that was huge for me. And what it did is it allowed me to start letting those walls down and look at other opportunities or options or ways, and which then moved into giving myself some grace of not being so, well, you didn't, you had this black and white goal and you didn't make it, so you're just a failure. That's what it was. And the stuff going on in my head about myself because of that. And so what it has allowed me to do is go, okay, well, that didn't work. So what can I do different? Not even what did I do wrong per se, but what could I do different? How could I look at it different? And at first it was hard because I had such a hard line of black and white thinking. And I was going to say earlier, it's kind of how I was, and it came from my upbringing, but it was also, then I worked in legal for years. And then I was in real estate, which is pretty, there's gray areas, but it's hard to understand that gray areas. It's real simple when it's black and white. I know what I can do and I know what I can't do. So make it simple.
But I also had black and white.
You did too? Yeah.
Yeah. Especially I think New
it's
Year's.
Common. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of why I'm kind of pausing on this, because revisiting and adjusting, it's such an important piece. Because if you don't do that, you literally can set yourself up for failure day one.
Absolutely.
Even before day one.
You're going to fail before you even get started because you're not having that flexibility. And that's, and think about it. Life is not black and white. It's just not. There's so many nuances and there's so much color and there's so many, there's so many things that come at you.
Why do we behave like it is though? Like, I think it's
because it's simple.
It's so common.
Because it's easy. I know for me, when it's black and white, when I go there, I know I get to a place of thinking, I know what to expect. I have this under control. I know what to expect. It's black and white. I know. So there's not going to be any kind of derailment or anything that's going to throw me off. I know what to expect. When there's color, there's things that can come up that I don't have control over anymore. So I know that was a big thing with me. The black and white was definitely a color, it was not a color, a control thing for me. It was a way that I can manage my life. And if I go too big, then it's overwhelming and I can't manage it. I was overwhelmed all the time. When you're in survival mode, you're already overwhelmed. You're already in an overwhelmed state. So imagine being in an overwhelmed state. And then you got to think in color. You got to think outside the box. My brain couldn't do it. It just couldn't do it. So if it's in black and white, I know what to expect and I can do this.
Is there like anything you want to touch on the tasks themselves?
Like what
Setting
do you mean?
up the in the worksheet, the setting the resolutions. It's like with resolutions, I think one thing that I can suggest is kind of like go into steps within that. Like one would be when it comes to choosing resolution, kind of what area, and then like within that
Oh,
area, like what would be one resolution that I could set for myself in that area. And I don't like to call them resolutions. I would maybe call it like more like vision. Like what would be my vision, or kind of like, okay, vision is a bit too broad. Resolution is better.
well, resolution's broad too.
It's broad, but
really.
I feel like it's slightly, yeah, it might be like you choose the area, and then within that area it's kind of like what is one thing that I would want to either accomplish or where I would want to be at. But it's like that's a bit more like a goal. um
Well,
yeah.
I do have written down. So you
Okay.
write your resolution that reflects a meaningful change or improvement that you want to make in your life. And I have some examples like I want to be healthier was one. I want to improve my relationships. I want to grow in my career. And then you're going to break it down into goals. And so and there's questions here that you can answer. And one of them is what specific actions can I take to achieve this resolution? And so, for example, I want to be healthier. So you might list exercising, eating better, or reducing stress. Then the next question, how will I measure progress? So you have to figure out how you'll track it. And then what is a realistic time frame? So you're going to set your time frame. And realistic is the key word here, not time frame. Realistic time frame. What challenges might I face and how I overcome them. So just, of course you can't predict everything, but you know that if you're going to get healthier, that includes eating better, that includes exercise. Okay. So then you break down, well, when you're eating healthier, what happens if you have some dinner you're invited to? What are you going to do in a case like that? So you got to kind of plan for it. What are you going to, you're going to go to dinner, spaghetti dinner. That's not always the healthiest, right? So you got to plan for it. Maybe you just go ahead and eat the spaghetti dinner. That's okay.
Yeah. And I think
You know?
like another comment here could be like we know ourselves quite well. So like
Yes.
a lot of a lot of times when we set these resolutions and goals, we kind of write them as if we're going to be a completely different person.
I know.
um,
True.
which with consistency we can be, but day one probably not.
No.
So it's also keeping in mind that like what are some of the slip ups that I could have, even with everything being controlled, even outside of going to the dinner. What is it that I could mess up? It's like, oh, maybe like I will have a long day, and at the end of the day, like I'm too lazy to cook or something, and I want to grab a snack or something.
Yeah.
So just like even like you know yourself, so you
Yeah.
know
And that's
where you.
okay.
Yeah, it's actually not okay. It's perfect because you
It is.
because you know where you can mess it up. And even like with that, you can be like, okay, usually I do this. It's like, okay, how can I go around it? Is there something that I can do? And then try it out. You might not fail, but that might be not the best approach, or it might help you to not do that thing. Let's say 3 times out of 7 in the week. It's like that's a win. That's good. Maybe we keep that. Maybe there's anything else we can. And a lot of times you will come, I see this all the time with the people that I work with, where I give them some ideas, and during the week as they do stuff, they come back to me and they're like, you know what, I thought I could do this, or maybe I could do that. And I'm like, that's exactly what we're here to do.
Yeah.
You go out in the week and you try things out, and you're like, I don't like this, but as you do that, you're like, oh, maybe this could help. And then you come back and you're like, okay, maybe let's try
Same
this
thing with
next week.
goals.
Yeah. And you just exactly the same thing.
You're just trying them out. You're testing them out.
Yeah,
And it
it's a
doesn't,
game. It's fun. Make it
it's a
fun.
game. Oh, I love that. I
I
love
would add
that.
that point. Make it fun. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to
make
be
it
like,
fun. Yeah, it doesn't have to, grind.
yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, I know. I like I said, I've done enough suffering in my life. I don't want to put myself in suffering situations. I'll sacrifice, I'll work hard, but I will not anymore purposely put myself into a suffering situation. I've suffered enough. I've
It's a
done
good approach.
enough. Yeah. Seriously, I've done enough. So, but we'll have this on here on our YouTube, on my YouTube channel. We'll have it a link for it.
And in the show notes, in other platforms, you will have it as well.
Yeah, and I'm even thinking I might put together. I mean, this is a like a little sheet to kind of guide you through, but maybe I'll put together a little goal sheet for them too. I think that would.
I can help you with that. I have my baby step template.
I know. Yeah, I think we'll do that. So we'll have that there for everybody, and so I hope this helps everybody. I mean, just be easy on yourself and start with just one.
Yeah, and have fun.
And have fun. Yeah, make it fun.
New year ahead of us.
Yes, it's going to be a good year too. So, well, thank you for listening, everybody. And I hope that everybody has a wonderful new year and safe one for sure.